Good. Good. Kia ora koutou. Welcome to today on Tuesday 21st of February to our 1 p.m. media stand-up. I'm Rachel Kelleher. I'm one of the Deputy Controllers for Auckland Emergency Management, and with me today I have Auckland Council's Director of Regulatory Services, Craig Hobbs. Because there is just the two of us, we're going to stand side by side today. Our current focus remains on supporting communities across Tamaki Makaurau who are continuing to deal with the impacts of last month's flood and Cyclone Gabrielle. In fact, we are 26 days now into response. We are also thinking of those in other regions who've had significant impacts. While it's been a difficult time for many, it's been great to see the community come together, whether that is supporting a neighbour, a kind word to our teams on the ground, or helping as a volunteer. And we just really want to thank everybody for their ongoing efforts to support one another. In terms of our operational updates, I'm just going to start with our isolated communities focus. So we're continuing to respond to our communities in need, in particular those that are isolated, and efforts to deliver emergency provisions like bottled water, food, sanitary items and more are ongoing. Last weekend, we asked Aucklanders not to go to our West Coast beaches and avoid Karikari, Piha, Anawhata, Tehinga Bethels and Muriwai. This week, we continue to remind those who are not residents to please stay away. Yesterday, via air, we delivered to Karikari 35 20 litres containers of 91 fuel, 125 items of food, 20 metres of extension cords, a generator for the community hub, a flexi bin for the school, and via road we delivered pallets of water and food to Piha and flexi bags and additional extension cords to Muriwai. As you can see by the types of items I've listed, that these really are very essential things, showing that these communities must continue to be our focus. We expect more deliveries to take place throughout the week. We are working closely with our other partnering agencies to provide on-the-ground support at community hubs in Muriwai and Piha, and we currently have welfare, insurance, financial support available, as well as advice on accommodation assistance. In Karikari, we have a number of community and government organisations providing support from urgent healthcare, welfare, psychosocial support at the Karikari Fire Station. I'm now going to pass on to Craig, who's going to give an update on our building assessment work.
Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. I just want to recognise, Rachel, you've been the face of the Auckland Emergency Management through the last 3 weeks. You've done a fantastic job, and thank you for what you have done. In terms of rapid building assessment or numbers, we've combined both the flooding response and the cyclone in these numbers, and I'm just going to give you red and yellow placards today. So 2,766 homes have been red or yellow placarded across both events. That's a significant number of impacted families and individuals, and again, very, very aware of the impact of those actions on those individuals, and I'll come back and talk to that in a little bit more detail. Also very mindful that our issues are very personal to the people that have been impacted, but we're also very focused on supporting our neighbouring councils and Hawke's Bay and so on who have been significantly impacted. Just want to continue to push the message about staying out of areas that have been cordoned off or red placarded houses. The reason we've done this isn't to inconvenience people, it's to keep people safe. It's critical that people observe those placards, cordons and so on, and I know there's a temptation for people wanting to get in and get to potentially pets that are indoors, get personal effects, but the risk to human life is pretty significant in those areas where we've taken that action. And it's not just about keeping yourself safe, it's also about keeping emergency services and first responders and so on who may have to come in and help you should we have an issue safe as well. So really do appreciate that you would consider that, please, or follow those rules. In terms of Muriwai and Piha, just for Muriwai residents, Auckland Council and a number of agencies are providing on-the-ground support at the Muriwai Ranger Station, which is opposite it's on Motutara Road, opposite the Sand Dunes Beach Cafe. We also have people at the Piha Surf Lifesaving Club. Both of those locations will be manned from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day. So both Muriwai and Piha residents can go there to talk to people about welfare needs, about insurance, about financial support and accommodation. So at Muriwai today we have the Ministry of Social Development, we have welfare people, we have Auckland Council building consents inspectors and compliance officers. At Piha we have again our compliance team, the park ranger will be there, police, Red Cross and our building inspectors and geotech engineers. So understanding that we're still working significantly in Piha, Muriwai, we've pretty much completed our activities there in terms of consenting, not in terms of supporting the community. As we move from response to recovery, I just want to give you again information because I know people are struggling sometimes to get information. We're trying to provide it as best we can, but if you have a yellow or a red placard, we encourage you to take the following steps. If you're insured, your first point of contact should be your insurance company. So lodge your claim as soon as you possibly can. Make sure you take photos of everything. They will advise you the process that you'll need to follow. They'll also advise you about the likely building professionals which they will engage, and they'll provide you with approval to engage your own if that option is available to you. Those engineers and building surveyors will assess properties, come back to council, report back to us on what needs to be remediated, and we will then work with them to try and sort out your property as soon as possible. If you're not insured, you'll need to engage with the licensed building professionals yourself to work through your remediation process. They should be able to advise you what approvals you may require for consents in order to comply with relevant legislation. I'd also refer people to the Building Research Association of New Zealand, BRANZ. They have a great guide on restoring homes after flood damage. All this information is available to you in an information pack on our Auckland Emergency Management website under Building Assessment, and you can find it on our Auckland story. Printed copies will also shortly be available at some of our service centres and libraries. That's a fact sheet that looks like that, building repair approvals. So that is available on our website, but we'll have hard copies at various libraries and service centres, as well as the locations in Piha and Muriwai that I mentioned before. We will be reaching out to property owners with red and yellow placards via email. We already have done that in a lot of cases. We've called people where we've had contact numbers, and we'll make sure we continue to do that to keep people up to date as best we can. I do ask, though, that people have patience and understand that we don't have contact details for everyone. We are doing our best to try and keep everyone in the loop, but there's a lot of work going on, as you'd appreciate, out there. If you are not being contacted by us, we ask that you please email us through rbacomms, that's COMMS, at aucklandcouncil.govt.nz, and provide us with your name, your property address, an email address, and a mobile number we can reach you on, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. And just finally, in terms of Normanby Road and the shot tower, the Colonial Ammunition Company shot tower, our compliance team and the contracted demolition company are on site today. They're preparing the ground and the works that need to take place, and they will continue or start demolition in the very near future. Our aim is to still have people back in no later than 7 days down the road. Obviously, want to get people in as soon as we possibly can. Again, safety of the public is our key priority as we work through this demolition, both residents and people who may want to come and have a look at what's going on. So we ask people to respect that it is a dangerous construction site. Thanks, Rachel.
Just turning now to our civil defence centres. So our civil defence centres, shelters and community support hubs and community-led centres are still open for people that need refuge from Cyclone Gabrielle or indeed last month's floods. We will continue to provide the support where it's needed and while it's needed. However, we are now looking to slowly reduce these as the need for them decreases. There are now 8 civil defence centres, shelters and info hubs open across the Auckland region. Overnight, we had 61 people staying in these civil defence centres and are working closely alongside our partner agencies such as MB and Kāinga Ora to ensure that everyone is moved to a suitable temporary accommodation. As we pivot to recovery, we will be closing the Trust's Arena Civil Defence Centre today and moving this centre to Te Pai o Kura, the community centre at Kelston at 5 p.m. today, of course Tuesday 21st of February. With regards to power, I do have an update from Vector that there still remains widespread power outages throughout affected communities. In addition to the crews on the ground, Vector have been sending out staff to talk to people in the worst hit communities to see what support they need while they wait for their power to be restored. And I understand that they've deployed members from right across their business, from their legal teams, their HR and office-based electricity, gas and fibre teams to also join their customer teams in doing this work to reach out to those in need. Remember, if you don't need temporary accommodation but are without power, you can charge your phones or use the Wi-Fi at your local library. Additionally, people can also visit our pools and leisure centres for a hot shower if needed. In terms of water, tap water remains safe to drink across the region, and water supply across all sites has largely been restored with the exception of Muriwai. In Muriwai, a tanker is providing emergency water, and that's located outside Sand Dunes Cafe. Watercare are closely monitoring our wastewater treatment plants, and they are currently stable, and the wastewater networks mostly recovered from the cyclone. You can find out further information in the latest updates on Watercare's website, and they will continue to update their page as new information comes to hand. And in terms of waste, our Waste Solutions team have been working on a solution for the proper disposal of sandbags. As you can imagine, this varies depending on what has come into contact with the sandbag. So I'm just going to walk through that a wee bit. So contaminated sandbags. If your sandbags have been contaminated with floodwaters, then they should be properly disposed of in a landfill. You can take these and other flood damaged materials to your nearest transfer station. Give our team a call on 0800 22 2200 to book a time to drop these off, or see our website for more details. Contaminated sandbags and their contents should not be reused. Those contaminants could include things like sewage or septic waste, animal waste, oil and gasoline residue, lawn chemicals such as fertiliser, pesticides and herbicides, or other chemicals that have come into contact through those floodwaters. Really important if you're handling those contaminated materials, whether it be building waste or sandbags, that you wear appropriate personal protective equipment such as long sleeve tops and pants and gloves, of course. If your sandbags have not come into contact with floodwater, they can be stored on your property for reuse. However, if they're not dry when stored away, mould can become a problem. So, ideally they need to be stored in a way that they're kept dry, covered. So if they are wet though, or have come into contact with rain or seawater, what you can do is you can empty your bags out, use the sand perhaps around your garden, on your lawns and your garden beds, and then wash the plastic bags with soapy water, and you can dry those out and store them for another time. So clean empty bags can be reused, or you can dispose of them if you need to in your normal curbside waste. Just a reminder though, any unused bags or fill sandbags placed on the curbside will not be picked up as part of a normal collection cycle. So filled bags shouldn't be left out on the curb. Uncontaminated and full sandbags can be dropped off at the Waitakere refuse station if you don't have a use for them on your own property. Again, quite a bit of information there, but that can all be found on our website, aem.org.nz. Moving now just to some of the services that Council has impacted at the moment. So just in terms of regional parks, which of course as we head towards the weekend are always popular destinations, a reminder that 6 of our regional parks remain closed and will be reassessed tomorrow. So just keeping an eye out for those updates. These parks are Archer Creek Regional Park, the western side of the Hanua Ranges Regional Park, which includes Hanua Falls, Muriwai Regional Park, Tawharanui Regional Park, Tiro Pururi Regional Park, and the Waitakere Ranges Regional Park. The Waitakere Ranges Regional Park closure includes the Te Henga walkway, as the cyclone has caused significant damage to this walkway, with numerous large slips along the length of the track. The walkway runs along the coastline between Te Henga Bethels Beach and Muriwai Beach. Please make sure you pay attention to these closures because they're in place again, similar to the cordons and the placard system, to keep people safe as we continue to support also those affected communities that those tracks are linked to. Do not attempt to talk your way through a cordon claiming to be a resident or part of the emergency response if that's not the case. This behaviour puts unnecessary strain and pressure on communities that are already struggling to deal with their basic needs. And just finally, if you need any further information about the floods or the cyclone, again, our website aem.org.nz has all of that information, and you can also still call us on our 0800 number, that's 0800 22 2200. Our teams have been very busy, and this has resulted in longer wait times, but rest assured we will call people back. And just a reminder, if you're affected by the floods and you need some help, there are a range of different support services available. You don't need to face this alone, and just we really want people to reach out. So use us at AEM, contact friends or family or a volunteer group, and of course there's always the range of mental health services that are available 24/7. And that is the end of today's briefing. So if anyone has questions, Craig.
Problems of people going through closed roads to have looks at slips, and what's your message to people doing that?
I think I can comment on that, and Craig might want to add to it, but we have had reports of people entering areas that have been closed to the public, and the message is very clear. They shouldn't be doing it for a range of reasons. It puts them at risk. They're there for a reason, and it also puts potentially our first responders at risk and impedes those teams that need to do the emergency rehabilitation work from getting out there on the ground and doing that. So absolutely, people should be respecting those cordons and exclusion areas and staying out.
Just a question for Craig. What is the expectation on Auckland ratepayers whose homes have been red stickered? Is there going to be any support in place for them?
Thanks, Rachel. In terms of rates relief, we treat those on an individual basis. So we ask people to contact us through our normal channels and let us know what their situation is, and we'll consider each one on an individual basis as to how we support or whatever we may be able to do.
Is there scope for possibly a line for red stickered homeowners to call so that they're not waiting in these hour-long queues?
I guess my answer to that is no, not specifically. We have numbers available, and I'd encourage people to go through those. I know it can be frustrating that you have to wait, but understand at the moment we're dealing with thousands of phone calls. In fact, through the major events, we were getting 1,000 phone calls an hour. So trying to handle that is very, very difficult. We just don't have the resource to be able to set up exclusive lines all the time. If we can, we will let people know, but at the moment we ask that people continue to use the
And just
standard
finally,
numbers.
from me, a breakdown of the red and yellow stickered properties.
Yep. So red means you can't enter your house at all. It's dangerous. It may either be dangerous because it's structurally unsound, or it's in danger of being impacted by unstable ground.
Sorry, do you have the number?
Oh, sorry, the numbers specifically. I didn't actually break them down, sorry. I gave you that total number, but I can get that back to you, sorry.
Great, thanks, Craig.
Just a quick question, Craig, on the Muriwai Piha situation. Is the land still unstable there? Because yesterday we heard that some places still can't be accessed by geotechnical engineers directly.
Correct. It is still very unstable in certain areas, and it's a real worry. And again, that's why, to Rachel's point, we don't want people going in there and rubbernecking. I mean, it's sad that people want to take advantage, I guess, of other people's misfortune. But at the end of the day, putting yourself in those areas creates real angst for us and for emergency first responders.
So in light of that, is there any sort of rough timeline for re-entry for people in Muriwai and Piha, particularly people in Muriwai Valley, where there are, I understand, 130 red stickered homes?
Yeah, I don't have those numbers, sorry, but the answer is that we're really reliant on Mother Nature. And I know that's a bit flippant, but we need to wait until the ground stabilises enough that we can actually make full assessments of those areas. So we have geotech engineers in there all the time looking at that. We are doing our utmost to try and get people into their homes where we can through alternative accesses if roads are at risk or whatever. But again, our decisions will be based on ground stability.
So does this mean people in Muriwai and Piha could potentially be out of their homes for months, or is it too early to say?
No, I think that is a fair assessment.
That they could be out for months?
Unfortunately, across Auckland, not just Muriwai and Piha, I mean, I know they are the greatest impacted areas, but we will have people, unfortunately, who will be out of their homes for many months, if not longer. Again, bearing in mind that there's a lot of remediation required. I can't put times on that. Our attitude or our focus will always be on keeping people safe.
Just a question on white stickered homes, because we know that these homes have suffered minor damage. What kind of on-the-ground support do we have for people who have white stickered homes, because they might not be able to get insurance claims? And also, what's our advice for people staying in white stickered homes which have had some damage?
Yeah. So white stickered homes means you can live in the house. Our rapid assessment teams would have identified what they believe needs to be looked at in those homes. It may well be that it's electrics need to be considered, or plumbing, or floorboards, or whatever it might be. But the house is sound enough to live in. But again, the advice to homeowners is to get those things checked out, because they may be impacted. At the risk of sounding like I'm abdicating responsibility, it's not council's role to manage that remediation. It's up to you as a homeowner, through your insurer or directly to service providers, to do that work.
In regards to people getting in contact with you or vice versa, are there still people that are missing, if you will, or are there people that you haven't been able to get in contact with?
Not that I'm aware of. Rachel, I don't know, I'll hand to you.
Yes, so certainly we're working, not that we've had reported to us, but we are working closely with a range of communities that are currently isolated. A number of those are starting to get some level of connection, whether it's walking connection and some limited vehicle connection, but they're still quite impacted in the way that they can't get bulk materials going in and out, so that's very much a focus of ours. I just thought I'd just touch again on the question around just the calling in around red or yellow placard. Just a reminder that we've got the email address as well, the RBA comms that people can use, and if they provide their details, then that will organise a call back for them, which is another way of being able to do that.
Great. You said that you didn't have any numbers, but how many homes approximately outside of the west coast of Auckland have been red or yellow stickered?
I didn't come very prepared, did I? Sorry. Look, these numbers will be very rough, because I'm just trying to think off the dashboards. We have two separate dashboards. We're trying to keep the both events separate. But I think from memory, the red stickered properties as a result of the flooding are around about just under 400. As a result of the cyclone, they're about 200 and something. Again, very rough numbers, I'm sorry. Yellows, I'd be guessing at, but similar sort of ratio. I think what I would say is that the flooding has taken longer to get on top of, because it was a greater area, but the impact on those pockets that were directly hit, like the west coast, there's been significant damage in smaller, more confined areas, if that makes sense.
Rachel, just a quick question on power outages in the west coast beaches, like Muriwai and Piha. What are the power outage numbers looking like? Because we heard from Vector today that the outage numbers doesn't include outages in those areas.
Yeah, that's right. So at the moment, we understand around 2,000 customers outside of those west coast areas are without power. But obviously that's quite a fluid situation, and that we're seeing a constant decrease on that number day by day. So good progress being made. But in terms of the numbers for the west coast communities, I don't have those in front of me. Again, though, there is power going back into some of those, but it's not uniform across all of those communities. So the best source of information around power restoration times is through Vector's website, where they've provided that zoned map with information on specific zones and the estimated return times.
And is it because of the land instability that we're unable to know how many power outages there are in that west coast area?
I think a combination too of sometimes the outages, yes. So yes, being able to get into sites to do that formal assessment. They've been using a range of different ways of doing that, by ground, by air. And what they're often finding is that, they do a repair, but then there's a further issue up the line that necessitates additional work that perhaps wasn't envisaged when they set out on the initial repair. But sometimes the issue can also be at a house level rather than at a community level. So there's a range of complexities that they're working through there. But like I said, the best information is through their website.
And just lastly on the Normanby Tower, do we know how many residents in that area are still out of their houses?
So everyone we evacuated on Monday week ago are still out of their houses. In terms of individuals, it's around about the 50 odd. So it was 27 units 26 units, 7 apartments, plus the commercial buildings.
Maybe around 55, I think. Yeah.
Sorry, 55. Thank you, Rachel.
55,
Yeah.
I think.
Some of those residents are saying that they're hoping to be able to get back earlier or figure out a way that can safely allow them to get back earlier. Is that something that council would look at negotiating with them, or is that just off the cards?
Look, we're going to keep our options open. It is a construction site, and it'll take some time to remove that tower, as I said, up to potentially 7 days. We don't want to endanger anyone. I'll keep coming back to safety. So we will evaluate on a day-by-day basis. If we believe we get that tower down to a level where it's no longer a hazard, then we may be able to allow people in, as long as they can move around that construction site safely. I'm not going to make any promises, but we'll continue. Again, our entire focus through this entire event for everyone has been to try and get them into their houses as soon as we possibly can.
Was a centralised sandbag, particularly contaminated sandbags collection idea floated, particularly because they are unsanitary? Was it floated that it might be collected by council or British workers?
We've looked at a range of ways that we could address contaminated sandbags and considering what's the best way of helping people to dispose of those. Ultimately, the decision has been made that the best way of doing that is for people to take those to the transfer stations directly. And the reason for that is that people clean up at different rates, so not everyone is doing the same work at the same time. This is a widely impacted area from a geographical scale. So giving people the access to the transfer station and to be able to time that in a way that suits them but also reflects the condition of their bags is something that's where ultimately we've landed.
And it is safe for people to transport in a car or in their boot these contaminated sandbags to the site?
Yes, again, people should, of course, just remember with the handling of anything that's potentially been contaminated to wear the right kind of PPE, and another option is also wearing of a mask if people are concerned about that. Yeah.
Just one question on the temporary accommodation service support for people. Do we know how many people are being helped through that service at the moment, and how many people are waiting to be transitioned from an evacuation centre to more longer-term accommodation?
I can't give you the number of the people that are being directly helped through the temporary accommodation services. That's done directly between those people and MB, so we don't hold those direct numbers. What I can say though is that we had 61 people staying in our civil defence centres overnight. Some of those people may not need longer term temporary accommodation. It may be that they just needed overnight accommodation for whatever reason, but that gives an idea of perhaps members of families that are still needing to perhaps have some longer term accommodation, and the focus is working with the temporary accommodation service and Kāinga Ora to help support people into a longer term solution that's not one of the civil defence centres, because they are really just stood up for immediate shelter. Yeah.
Back to the red and yellow sticker homes, what other areas apart from the west coast are affected and have the red yellow stickers?
Yeah, so through the flooding, the North Shore was significantly impacted, parts of West Auckland as well, and the central city, Glen Eden and the likes. Through the cyclone, very much the west coast, but also through Clevedon and some of those South Auckland areas. But the flooding was obviously very, very widespread.
I'm sorry, so I should have been more specific. The isolated communities, is there any others apart from in the west coast?
In terms of specific areas of impact, it's the same old places that tend to get hit all the time, sadly. It's the Henderson Valleys, Henderson, that area. It is the Wairau area and Milford was significantly impacted through the flooding. Again, Clevedon and Mangere. Mangere was very badly hit. So pockets of different areas for different reasons.
And maybe just on that, obviously within those isolated communities, particularly those West Coast communities, there are a number of yellow and red stickers. For some of our isolated communities, it's not necessarily that they're yellow or red stickered, it's the fact that they've got their road access cut off, so they can't get out to get access to a central supply. So we've got different, slightly different scenarios running. So we have, got isolated communities in parts of South Head and Kaipara. We're working obviously with those West Coast communities as well. But I think it's fair to say between both events, the flooding and the cyclone, that we've seen impacts pretty much region-wide, including our Hauraki Gulf Islands. So it's region-wide where we've seen impacts. Not all of those have been at the scale that we've seen in some of those community areas or suburban areas that Craig's listed, but certainly there is properties that have been affected right across the board.
Given how busy civil defence has been in the last couple of weeks, are there calls for more funding or more resources for civil defence? Is that something that's been thought of? Future, probably more of these things happening. Are you looking for more funding or resources? I
think one of the great things about the way that we work as a country is that we step up and help each other when we're in need. So from an Auckland emergency management or a civil defence group perspective, we've got the ability to lean into other groups across the country. And that's certainly what's happened. So we still have staff working downstairs from a whole raft of different councils and government agencies who've come in to help us with the various pieces of work that we're doing. Equally, we're looking at how we can support, lend our support to other parts of the country that are now also going through the severe impacts of Cyclone Gabrielle. That wider question of funding, I think, that's something that, of course, we will be looking at carefully through our recovery planning, but I don't think it's just specific to the Civil Defence Group. I think it's, what we do as a council and how we prepare or make ourselves resilient for future events. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate that. And we'll see you back again tomorrow.